Hi, everybody. Merry Christmas. You know, you hope and pray for rain for so long, and then you get it, you say, oh my heavens, what are we doing? We've got these problems. We got the pros from over here today. Are going to help us, guide us, and get us a better understanding of key elements of what we need to do if we have issues with that hill. If something goes wrong up there and that we need to move or we need action, we're going to have some information passed out today that's going to be helpful for us. It's going to talk to us about evacuation plans, communication plans, all the things that are required to get us and our properties in best possible condition to manage something that may happen or may not happen. So thank you all for coming. I'm looking forward to learning about what we need to do, and I'm looking forward to helping you in any way that I can, and together we're going to get through this. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Supervisor Gleason. Here to speak about the Way Fire is your fire chief, Chief Brian Marshall.
Thanks, Tyler. I just want to set the stage just so we're all on the same page as we go through and talk about the potential for flood and mud and debris flow. How many people were here in this building for the Shirley Fire Community Meeting? Yeah, a few of you. How many people were here for the Way Fire Community Meeting? A few more. We sat in this church, this auditorium, and we talked about the fire, but we also talked about downstream effects, what would happen this winter. And that's why we're here tonight. But let's go back to talk about a little bit about the fire. The conditions that we faced here in California over the last several years have been fueled by drought. A lack of rain has increased the fire behavior in California exponentially. And these fires that are burning are not only burning the fuel, the trees, they're nuking the soil. They're burning extremely hot, and when they align in a perfect condition with a wind behind them and they're burning uphill, the energy released is unbelievable. And what we've seen this summer is the ground, the dirt, absolutely turn to glass. It does not hold water, it sheds water. And we knew right away, based on the conditions of the Way Fire, the Shirley Fire, the Nichols, all these fires that we've had up here, that winter was going to be problematic. And that's exactly what's the stage has been set. So we had this fire, and we told everybody we would be back in the winter to talk about being prepared for flood, mud, debris flow, and what the potential could have. So now we're having these rains, of course, but we're not out of the woods. There's T-shirts out there in the fire service. It talks about California's 4 seasons. It's not fall, winter, spring, summer. It's floods, fires, earthquakes, and drought. So I fully expect that we'll be back in this same auditorium next year talking about a wildfire burning through your community. And then we'll be back here next winter talking about floods in your community. But what we're here tonight is you're engaged, we're engaged, and we're going to talk about how to be prepared for these winter storms that have the potential to do great damage, to cause injury or possibly death. So thank you for being here, being engaged. The fire burned this summer, but it's still causing us problems. Thank you.
As the fire chief said, following the fires this summer, we fully expected to have this threat of mud and debris flows this winter. And since that time, we've had some studies done. And Georgiana Armstrong, she is the coordinator of emergency services for the county, is here to talk about those studies.
I'm a bit bit shorter than my boss, so I'm gonna turn that down. I'm Georgiana Armstrong. I'm the Emergency Services Manager for the County of Kern. We're part of the Kern County Fire Department, so I work directly for the chief. The map that you see behind us is of the burn scar of the Way Fire. And after the Way Fire, the fire department and CAL FIRE requested an assessment of what was left behind, which was done by the California Department of Conservation. So a few weeks back, they gave us their report, and this is the information that I'd like to share with some of you tonight. This is about 4,000 acres in round numbers. The Way Fire burnt about 4,000 acres, and just under 50%, about 1,800 acres, the soil is described, as the chief mentioned earlier, as moderate to severely burned. So almost half of it. And what happens when you have this moderately to severely burned soil? The technical term that they use is called hydrophobic soil, which basically means soil that hates water. It was described to me by the experts as, think of this, think of putting down a sheet of saran wrap on top of the soil. The water is not going to be absorbed, it's going to run off. It's going to create a surface that is no longer going to let the water absorb the way you would normally expect it to. Another impact of the fire is that the vegetation that would normally absorb and hold back water is now gone. It's been burned away, and it's now part of the debris laying on top of this hydrophobic soil. And those two factors combine to create a condition where when water falls, you're going to have an decreased absorption, so an increased runoff, and it's going to happen faster than you would normally expect if there wasn't a fire. And just to make things a little bit better, in addition to the fire, underlying all that is the baseline soil that was in that area even without a fire, which was defined as decomposed loose granite material, which by itself, without a fire, is highly susceptible to erosion. We also have steep canyon slopes, and you also have numerous watersheds and drainage. So you've got debris, lack of vegetation, hydrophobic soil, slopes, and drainages. And they all drain into what is called, and here's the technical term, a large alluvial debris flow fan at the base of the Nellie Dent Creek, and that is just above the town of Wofford Heights. So when you look at that map, and it looks like that burn scar is kind of lurching and lurking over your town, that's exactly what it is and what it's doing. So what does that mean? They wanted to talk to us about what could happen if we were to have a triggering event. And what could happen is that we could have a debris flow. We could have flood. Well, what is a triggering event? In a lot of things that we look at in emergency management, they talk about the 100-year event, the 500-year event. They said, no, this is a 10-year event, which really perked up my interest because that's just not a high enough number. And what that means is, in any given year, there's a 10% chance of a storm meeting that criteria. It doesn't mean it happens once every 10 years, and it doesn't mean that there's only one. It means in any year, there's a 10% chance this could happen. And if we had that 10-year event, there's a 40 to 60% probability that we would have a mud and debris flow that would be considered of moderate. Moderate being 10,000 to 100,000 cubic meters of flow. Well, these numbers, 10%, 40%, 60%, 10,000 to 100,000, what does that mean? That means a definite threat to property and life safety if this were to occur, especially at the higher elevations. I was speaking with a lady earlier, and she said, I look out my back window, and I'm looking right up there at the burn scar. It's right there. If you are in that situation, obviously your home is at higher risk than someone who lives outside of this debris flow area. So what does it mean? We kept saying, what does that mean? What is this triggering event? And there are two factors that we need to be concerned about when it comes to the weather. It's how much rain falls, the intensity of the rainfall, over a period of time, or the rainfall accumulation over a period of time. So we could have a very brief, intense rainflow that could trigger something, or you could have a less intense rainflow that happened over a longer period of time. So they've given us some charts to look at, and I don't have big things, but it's this kind of stuff where we're looking at if we get an inch in an hour, we're in trouble. If we get an inch over 10 hours, we're not in trouble. So we are monitoring and watching the Weather Service. If you were not aware, for the previous weather events, there were many county and state departments that had eyes on this area and had done a lot of preparation. The roads department, working with Caltrans, they were out clearing out drainages and debris, trying to keep things as open as possible. The fire department, the sheriff's office, which is primary and evacuation. Human Services and the Red Cross, identifying shelter sites, multiple shelter sites, pre-staging equipment. Aging and Adult Services, looking at their databases to see who might need assistance evacuating. Superintendent of Schools, Public Health, my office at OES. We have pre-designed the messages in what's called ReadyKern. So if we need to get a message out to you, we know exactly what we're going to say and it's ready to go. We've also defined the geography where those calls are going to go, so we can move as quickly as possible. If you are not familiar with ReadyKern, it is the county system for getting emergency information to you quickly. It is free. There is no charge to you as constituents. We have brochures on the back table, and if you've not registered for ReadyKern, I'd suggest you can consider doing so. But I would also want to say to you, if living in your home and you're monitoring the weather conditions with some of the tools that are going to be explained to you later tonight, if you get that feeling, something doesn't feel right, I'm feeling uneasy, I think maybe I ought to move, I ought to get out of here, don't wait for a call from ReadyKern. Always listen to your instinct. And if you do get a call from us at ReadyKern, please follow those instructions as quickly as possible. I'm going to turn this back over to you, Todd. Thank you.
Okay, the fire chief's going to speak a bit more about preparedness. One thing we've talked about with Geo is just making everybody aware of the issue, and I think in the rainfall we've had in the past, we've really made an effort to get the word out, and I hope you guys were informed. And now the next step is preparedness. Chief Brian Marshall will talk about that.
Well, we're up here every spring talking about being prepared for wildland fires, and being prepared for a flood is a lot along the same way. Number one thing, register for ReadyKern. I cannot stress that enough. How many people got ReadyKern alerts for the recent storms? The information's there. We're going to give you all the information we can in a very short, condensed statement, but you have to be registered so we can get that information out to you. We do not have enough time. The Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, all the agencies that will be responding to an incident do not have enough time to go door to door when it's raining and the hillside's moving. So you have to register for ReadyKern. We use it year-round. Wildland fires, floods, earthquakes. We won't tell you that your garbage is not going to be picked up tomorrow. We're not going to tell you that there's a Christmas parade in Lake Isabella. When that ReadyKern goes off, it's an emergency. Pay attention, acknowledge the message, and then do what we tell you to do. It's vitally important. Okay, so we've had a couple storms, and the rain's, light rain, about 2¼ inches of rain in the first storm. It just kind of fell steady. The hillside stayed. No major hillside slippage, no major mud and debris flow. We've been really lucky. How many people have put sandbags around their house or have done any type of measures? A few of us. Not enough. Everybody. We have provided sand and sandbags down at Wofford Heights Park for you to go down and get to protect your house. You can use these sandbags to keep water from coming in the back door, the garage, the front door, and also to divert water away from your house. The water's going to start at the top and it's going to work its way down and it's going to build up steam. You have an opportunity right now to go and get sandbags and deflect the water away from your home. But this is a partnership with your neighbor, because you can literally take all of that water and protect your home and absolutely destroy your neighbor. So this is a partnership. This is where you get to know your neighbor. You need to work with your neighborhood, your neighbors, your friends, and work together to move this water down the hill. There was a wildland fire a year and a half ago in Camarillo in Ventura called the Springs Fire. And if you've been following the news, every time it rains over there, mud and debris are coming down that mountain and going through communities. And the last storm, there was mud, there was rocks, there were trees up to the roof lines. But if you notice that mud and debris, it's going to take the path of least resistance. It was going between the houses. So if you consider that as you're out there putting in your sandbags, you can actually channel the water down your sidewalk, down between your neighbor's house, work together, and get the water out to the street, and then it's going to start going downhill. County Roads has been very engaged with clearing out the culverts, so the water continues to move through the path that it normally moves every winter. So sandbags are available, and we'll keep putting sandbags there, so you can be prepared today. When that mud's coming down the hill, it's too late. I guarantee you it's too late. You also need to be prepared, and we found this out with this Springs fire in Camarillo. It's happening at night. You go to bed, and that water and that mud and that rock and those trees are moving down the hillside at night. And you're going to be sound asleep, and all of a sudden your house is going to be washed away with you in it. Not a good situation. Ready current again. But there's some other factors that play into this. It's being engaged before the storms happen. And we have the National Weather Service here tonight to give you information on how you can get that early warning. You need to be engaged with the weather. You really do. So when you go to bed at night, you know you might not be going to bed. You might be staying up, watching, waiting for our call. You need to be engaged with what's happening with the weather conditions. The last part of preparedness is when we tell you to do something, you do it. We do not take evacuations lightly. There is a huge impact to communities when we evacuate, but we do not hesitate to issue those evacuation orders. We will not hesitate. If the situation's right or wrong, we are going to issue those evacuation orders. You need to be ready to go. That's where you need to start planning now. You need to be prepared now. What are you going to take? Medicines, some clothes, some money. What do you need to grab? You have a baby. You need baby food. You might be gone an hour. You might be gone 10 hours. You might be gone a week. You might be gone a long time. You need to be ready to go. Animals, how many people have large animals? That is something that is very difficult to move in an emergency situation. You need to be ready for that. We will be setting up evacuation centers, places where you can take your animals, your large animals, but it's not going to happen like that. Just like it does in a wildland fire, you need to evacuate out of the area, and then we'll be setting up those evacuation shelters and places for your animals, places to feed. But you need to be prepared right now. You need to have that list. Go to FEMA.gov. There's a lot of good information there that you can get so you can be prepared now. So those are just some of the few tips. The water's going to come. Might just be some light rain where the water's going down through the gutters. It might be the major mud and debris flow. It might be total erosion of the hillside where it's moving instantaneously coming down the hill. You will not be able to outrun it, just like you cannot outrun a wildland fire. I want to just leave you with just one little thought about water movement and mud and debris flow. We've all been sitting on the beach, our toes in the sand and the waves crashing over. And you know, it doesn't take much water to knock you over, one of those waves, as you're sitting there. The force of water is unbelievably powerful. And you throw in mud, you throw in boulders, you throw in trees, and we know what trees burned up here in this hillside. You won't stand a chance. You will not stand a chance against that. Be prepared now. If you need further information, like I said, you can go to FEMA.gov. A lot of good information there. Go to the local fire station. Talk to them. If you have a specific question and they can't answer, we'll get you the information. We want to make sure you're prepared so you're ready for the next round of wildland fires next summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Marshal. Up next, we have Kern County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Henry Bravo to talk about evacuation and the Sheriff Department's response to this.
Thank you. From a law enforcement perspective, especially up here in Kern Valley, our main function is going to be evacuations. How many people think that law enforcement can force you to move from your house? Good, we can't. You know, there's a Penal Code section 409.5 says we don't have that power to do that. We're going to give 2 warnings. 1, recommended evacuation. It is strongly recommended you evacuate the area immediately. A significant threat to life exists. This will be your last warning. The second one is precautionary evacuation. It is recommended you evacuate or prepare to evacuate the area. A threat to life may be very close. You may or may not get a notice. Kern County Sheriff's Office up here in Kern Valley, we're constantly planning just in case it does happen. From a law enforcement perspective, when these things do happen, we're there to try to protect your property from burglaries, looters, and things of that nature. And when these things do happen, we have search and rescue that helps out tremendously up here in this area. And we're very lucky that a lot of these members live up here. So we're constantly evaluating the situation every day because we do patrol the areas every day. And we're trying to educate the folks that live in this area what they need to do in case it does happen. And you know what I noticed the last time that it did rain 2.5 inches is that a lot of people were coming up to us. My elderly mother lives in this area. Can you help us out? That's stuff that we need to be planning for. You know, we can't wait until the water comes down. So we're constantly planning. You know, we're going to be here for questions and answers afterwards. If you have any concerns, you can address me or Lieutenant Little. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Jessica Piffero. She is with the American Red Cross Kern chapter.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for letting us come speak with you today about the Red Cross response for possible landslides in the area. We want to let you know that we've pre-staged a lot of our resources. Our shelter trailers are in place in strategic locations, as well as our shelters that we've established. So as soon as there is that evacuation that's ordered, we're going to be setting up right away and making sure that all of our residents are safe and comfortable in our shelter during that time period. I want to reiterate that you need to make sure you have an emergency kit ready to go, just like the chief said. Make sure you have all of your supplies, 3 days supply with the food and water, all those things. I know you guys are all here, you're the responsible ones. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit. Make sure all your friends, your family, everybody else knows that. Once the evacuation order has been issued, that's too late to be scrambling to get your clothes together. We mentioned the Camarillo Springs mudslide that occurred in Ventura. Our volunteers were there with the shelter, and it occurred at about 2 in the morning, and we had residents running into the shelter with barely the clothes on their backs. So you want to make sure it's already a hectic situation when you're being evacuated, right? So you want to make sure that you have everything ready to go, you have a kit, you have a plan, and you're informed as to the situation that's going on. I would also say, in addition to all the other resources, of course, make sure you're tuned into Ready Kern, but also if you have a smartphone, you can download the Red Cross Flood app. And on that smartphone app, there's all sorts of resources for you. There's information on what to put in your kit. There's weather alerts when flood warnings are issued. You can get an alert right on your cell phone. And as soon as we get our shelters into this system, it will give you your closest shelter location, and it'll use your phone GPS actually to tell you where you can go in the event of evacuation. So that's a really great resource in addition to Ready Kern and all these other great government resources we have at our disposal. Lastly, I'll say, if you would like to volunteer with us, you know, our volunteers who respond in this area, they work and live and serve in this area. They're not people necessarily from all sorts of, from regions. It's you guys in your own community helping out your own friends and family and neighbors. But we encourage you to sign up to volunteer ahead of time. Once the evacuation order has been issued, then it's too late. We don't have time to train you and get you into the system. Call us up at our office, visit our website, redcross.org/kernchapter, and we'll get you all set up and trained so you can help out your friends and family and neighbors when there is an evacuation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Next up, we have Steve Mendenhall. Steve is with the National Weather Service, and he is a meteorologist in charge. Just in my recent experience here the last couple months, the updates from their social media sites have been very helpful, and he's here to give a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I've got a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to put up now to explain to you about a program the National Weather Service has. It's called the Weather Ready Nation. And it's essentially a way for you to do things to make yourself more resilient against different types of weather threats. Okay, hope you can see that okay. Essentially, the Weather Ready Nation idea is to be a force of nature, trying to know about what nature can throw out to you as far as weather threats and how to behave so that you can be better prepared and be able to take action to take care of yourself better rather than waiting for things to happen to you. Now, the idea is that the Weather Ready Nation was about building resilience for communities because there are more and more cases with populations growing in more weather extreme areas, that there are more weather and water events that are occurring around the country. And so we've decided to put this program together across the entire country called the Weather Ready Nation concept. And you can reduce what happens to you by being prepared, like we talked about earlier tonight. And that's why this initiative is so important. And the goal is to support the National Weather Service's mission to reduce the threat to life and property by having communities be more resilient and prepared for future weather events that occur to them. And the idea is that you get better information and make better decisions for yourself by being prepared and knowing what to do. And so, like the slogan is, to be a force of nature by knowing your risk, taking action, and being an example in your own community too. Share this information with other people. So what is weather resiliency? It's essentially being aware of your weather surroundings and knowing what you can do during types of weather events. And that means knowing the following things. What are your weather risks? What you should do to prepare for those events, including what kind of actions to take, and also where you can find the information you need to make good decisions about weather threats. So first of all, what are your weather risks? Well, like we explained earlier, we have a situation here with the burn scar. And so the hydrophobic, there's that term again, the water fearing or water phobic is the water, that's why I'm afraid of water, is in the area, is a serious threat for the Wofford Heights area. That means the soil repels water, like was explained earlier, rather than absorbing it. And so debris can flow with it. And it doesn't take very much rainfall to cause a flash flood or a debris flow. It only takes about 2/10 of an inch of rain in 15 minutes. That's not very much. Or 3/10 in 30 minutes, or as little as a half an inch in 1 hour. These recent rains you had were over a period of 6 to 10 hours or more. So it just takes a brief period with some heavy rain could cause real problems in the area. And this is only about 1/3 of what you'd normally expect to have for a flash flood threat. The soils that Georgiana mentioned earlier that are already conducive to flash flooding in the area are now 3 times more likely to produce a flash flood like this. And so it's a very debris-prone area for flash flooding. So how can you prepare for a flash flood? Well, you need to first of all know what kind of terminology we use at the National Weather Service when we put out watches and warnings, for example. Also know your flash flood safety rules, and plan ahead with things like knowing a good escape route to get out of the area and how to get to higher ground in case flooding does occur in your area. And also, of course, keep informed about the weather, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute too. So for a watch versus a warning, when you hear the term a flash flood watch, it means that the conditions are favorable. It's not occurring, but it's favorable for flooding to occur. And we give this to you as an advance notice or a heads up that flooding could occur in the area. And what you should do in those situations is just monitor the weather more closely, and then be prepared with that emergency kit you might have to make sure you know where it is and get to it in a hurry, for example. And also just do whatever else you have to do if you observe flash flooding in the area. Now, a warning, when one of those is issued, it means it's either occurring or is going to be occurring. It's imminent across that area. And we issue those by way of the emergency alert system. How many of you have seen the messages that crawl across the TV that says a thunderstorm warning, a flash flood warning? Well, we issue those from the National Weather Service by way of the NOAA Weather Radio program. And the commercial TV and radio stations pick that up and they relay that information out to you. And it automatically can also be sent to you on your wireless device, such as a smartphone. Flash floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, and I believe dust storm warnings are some of the few types of warnings we issue that will actually send you a text message on your smartphone or any kind of a wireless device that you have. And it essentially will text you, and you can look at the message and know that you need to do something immediately because of the situation at hand. It's very much like the ready kern, but this has to do with more like the cell tower proximity. And if your provider has that service available, you can leave it in place to use, or if you want to, you can opt out of it. But it's generally a good idea to leave that service turned on. And so if you do get a warning, you should take action immediately instead of waiting to see what's happening in the area to confirm anything's going on. Now, as far as flash flood safety rules, the best thing, of course, is always to get to higher ground whenever you can. You don't want to walk through moving water. It only takes 6 inches of water to knock you off your feet. And if you add in things like debris, such as the boulders, rocks, mud, pieces of wood and things like that, it's more likely to knock you off your feet if you try to move that moving water. And also, don't try to drive through moving water either. It only takes 6 inches to reach the bottom of a vehicle, and that can cause it to stall in some cases. And also, a foot of water will float many vehicles, and even SUVs and pickups can be swept away by 2 feet of water. So it's always just to avoid going through running water if all possible. More information about that is found at a website listed here, floodsafety.noaa.gov, and I have some handouts in the back that have all these different websites listed on them too, so you can refer to those later on. Now, as far as where to find weather information, one of the places you can get it is from the National Weather Service, because we're open every day of the year, 24 hours a day. We have at least 2 meteorologists on staff constantly at our office in Hanford, which covers the Central California interior, including all of Kern County. Our website is pretty easy to remember, weather.gov, and you put a Hanford after the end of it, and that's on that handout I told you about before too. And there's also a mobile version of the National Weather Service's website, and you can bookmark on there your location. We're also on social media, and these addresses are again on that handout. We're on Facebook and Twitter. The NOAA Weather Radio system, we have a frequency we use, 162.55 megahertz. It's on the handout as well. It's a dedicated radio broadcast for nothing but weather information, and you can get the tone alarm messages that come out immediately to you on that radio. You can set it so it can wake you up at night if you need to. And I mentioned before about the wireless emergency alerts. I'm going to demonstrate our website now. I'm just going to minimize this a second here. And this is the live website as it stands right now for our office. And you can see on the website that we have there's a map on the page that allows you to figure out what location you're in. So you can just click on it to get the forecast. Or if you want to, you can go to the top of the page and just type in your address. Your city name. So you can type in here, Wofford Heights. they'll give you the forecast down to a 1 kilometer square over the city itself. We have essentially 10,000 different points on our map that we monitor constantly and update the forecast on. And this will be the latest forecast for Wofford Heights. And you can see right now we've got just a slight chance of showers for Friday night that's showing up on the screen. And essentially after that we have generally pretty fair conditions for a while. So by monitoring this, you can get a general idea what's going on with the weather, just to see if there's going to be any threat of any kind of rain in the area. And you can see there's a slight chance of showers, so it's really not much of a concern right now. Now, if we did have any kind of concerns in the area, on that same map, you would see different kinds of colors that show up. For example, right now, you can see up to the north toward the Sacramento area in purple, there's a winter weather advisory in effect. On the coastal area, they got a coastal flood advisory, which is shown in green. And if you had anything down into Kern County on the map, it would light up in different colors as well for a flash flood watch or a winter storm warning. Even a flash flood warning can be shown on there too. So I can give you some of that heads up notice about what's going on by using the website. And we mentioned social media as well. There's a link to our Facebook page that's on here. And we constantly update that as well, like was mentioned earlier. And so we have all kinds of people that follow us for different types of events in the area. We've done media interviews as an example of one here too. We've also got a Twitter feed, which to me is a better way to find out information in a hurry, because it's almost like a constant feed of news that's being sent out, rather than more like a social, chatty type of thing that you'd see on Facebook. And so we have on here, oops, there you go. We've had information on here earlier today about an interview we did. Here's a drought statement that came out earlier. Here's the latest on some lingering light showers and the Tehachapi's that were occurring, showing where that was. Just reports about different types of observations in the area. So if something was happening right around here, we'd be talking about that as well. So there's different sources you can go to get weather information from us. I'll go back to the slideshow. Okay. I mentioned before the NOAA weather radio system, and that does broadcast 24 hours a day. It'll have a forecast across the area, constantly airing. There's the frequency, again, in the handout we have back there. The transmitter's up on Shirley Peak, out by the ski area. And these radios are generally pretty expensive. They cost between about $20 or $60, and you can find them at places like Radio Shack or some of the bigger department stores too. They generally carry these. And you can actually program it to tell you that I want to hear about flash floods in the Kern County area on that radio, and then put it in standby mode, and if something happened, you get the alarm immediately about that. And like I said before, the TV and radio stations pick these up and they air them, they relay them as well into commercial radio and TV stations. The wireless emergency alerts I mentioned before, like on your cell phone, you've probably, if you have ever seen before, like an Amber Alert, for example, they come across on cell phones sometimes. It's the same kind of a system. We actually air those from the National Weather Service. And this is a sample of what you would get for a text message. It just says a flash flood warning is in this area until a certain time. Avoid the flood areas and check the local media. And it's signed by the National Weather Service, so you know where the source came from. And more information about that's not a very good URL, but it's on the handout in the back too, to learn more about that system. And always on your wireless device, make sure the volume is up so you can hear that alarm when it comes out in the middle of the night to wake you up about it. Now, if you want to get a copy of this slide presentation, this is one URL I don't have written down on the handout, but if you want to write this down, it's go.usa.gov and then a slant 7, and it's capital M, capital G, capital G. You can get a PDF version of this presentation, and you can read it yourself afterwards.